Welcome to PM Express Business Edition. It is believed to be the backbone of the economy, depending on the analysis that you do. I'm talking about the gold sector. But what has actually reignited arguments to reassess its contribution to the Ghanaian economy? What is the state of the gold industry in Ghana today? And indeed, what about some who said that maybe there's time for us to take a second look about what we get from the sector, their contribution to the communities that they are working, and whether even recent calls for a total halt of this activity is fair or not. On PM Express Business Edition, look at the state of Ghana's gold industry as we assess its contributions to the economy and whether calls for a review of its contribution to the economy is well placed or not. Mr. Suleiman Kone is the Chief Executive of the Ghana Chamber of Mines. Mr. Kone, thank you so much for your time, and it's been a long time.
You've been dodging me, George.
But how are you doing yourself? I mean, well, interesting developments in the industry. Very interesting. Having led the industry over a number of years, the changing faces, the changing arguments, sitting back as CEO, how sometimes do you take some of these comments? Some are well informed, some are also not grounded on facts, and often some will say directed by emotions.
Well, I think this is a very good observation, and as you all know, we say that our work is based upon research. We do research-based advocacy, and we do a lot of research, getting information from our members, getting information from various regulators as well, indeed, sometimes even from civil society. You know, we work with various shades of persons and opinions, and our scorecard tells us that the mining industry is a real champion, actually, if you look at our contributions to the economy. Not just in terms of fiscal contribution, because I think that is overflogged in terms of the royalties we pay, corporate taxes we pay. I remember companies continue to publish this in the press, and we also do. Yeah. I remember companies tend to be doing it quarterly. We tend to be doing it annually because we get all the information on an annual basis. But the reality is that we are the real champions. In fact, some government functionaries will tell us privately to say, are you guys aware that you are the real guys standing? The only guys standing, i.e. the only sector standing within the economy. Because the numbers don't tell us.
Because of what you contribute to the economy.
Of course. The numbers don't tell us. And these days, I don't like talking about the fiscal contributions too much because, like I said, it's something which everybody talks about.
I think it's overflogged.
I think it's overflogged. But really into what it means for the entrepreneur who does business with the mining industry. If you consider, and I have friends who do business with the mining industry, and I see the numbers coming from reports furnished to regulators, particularly Minerals Commission. It comes to my desk on a regular basis, and I say, whoosh. But these guys are making good cuts for themselves and for their country. So that is an area which is not discussed in depth. And I think that we need to shine a lot more.
And this program will offer us an opportunity to dig deep into those areas. But if I look at your numbers, and based on last year's numbers, I look at the production, the earnings, and even I look at what is happening on the international market right now. And I stand to be educated. Some will say, maybe it's all more of bed of roses for the chamber if you look at your earnings, the production, even recent data from the Minister of Lands talking about the fact that Ghana, in terms of Africa, has moved to be the lead producer. I don't know what the situation as we speak right now. I mean, are we fair to say that, you know, it's all good and rosy for the industry based on the earnings that I'm seeing from your members and even what is happening to gold right on the international market where everybody's running to gold as a safe haven for investment?
Well, it is not, you know, a complete, you know, rosy picture. We have companies who are struggling.
No, interesting.
Yeah, we have companies.
Of course. Mining companies.
Mining companies which are struggling, and that's the reality. Of course, we have others who are doing very well, and we are quite excited about that. We need to push them and make sure that they continue to be more competitive. They produce for the benefit of the economy, i.e., the employees, the state itself, and any other stakeholder who actually does business, especially the communities. We want them to be more inclusive in the business of mining. That is one of our key, things we've been speaking about in the last few years or so. But they also have a kind of mixed bag, others who are actually struggling, and we need to have an environment which would encourage a lot more investment, making sure that we reduce the upfront taxes and fiscal imposts on the mining industry, and then rather focus more on the nets. Once production is done, let's get to the table, and then let's make sure we have an equitable way of sharing the cake, so to speak.
Mr. Suleiman, sorry to catch you, but there are some who struggle to understand a mining firm complaining about the fiscal region. Now, we'll stretch it to this whole stability agreements and all the rest, but some will struggle to understand a mining firm complaining about high level of taxes, because what is the composition of taxes here, where if the taxes is based on your production or your earnings, or if it's VAT, why is a mining firm that is your member complain about taxes?
And you remember, George, what I spoke about. I don't like talking about the fiscal regime too much, because I'm not of the school of thought which says that once you come into a country, you have an agreement, you know what the fiscal regime is, you decide to do business here, you complain. No, I've never believed in that. You know what it is, you decided to actually opt for it, you have to play by the rules. However, when in the middle of production and the company has made all these investments, and then you start tweaking the fiscal regime, that is where the issue is. And that's why you have some of the companies who are saying that, look, I need to have a stability agreement or a project development agreement, because then it freezes the fiscal terms. Don't forget that we are talking about an industry whose price is not determined by the companies. They are effectively a price taker. We are not like an FMCG. You decide to brand, you have differentiation in terms of the premium quality of the product, and therefore you can charge a premium and all of that. Ours is not like that. Ours is a commodity. So you have an area which you need to manage to be viable, and that is your cost. So if you have a situation where governments upfront decide that, look, I'm going to take so much upfront even before you start production, or even before you make, effectively when you start production, then it creates problems. And so the general complaint is around exploration, which we have been speaking about all these years. That exploration is such an important part of mining. Sometimes people forget that even before you mine, you need to know where the ore body is, the quality of the ore body, the type of capital you need, the kind of equipment you will need, and so on and so forth. And there's a whole technical evaluation which actually goes on. So before you do this, and the risk of exploration is so high, because as the name says, you are exploring, you are now looking for it. So if upfront, government says that, the quantum of money you have brought for investment, you want a part of it as part of your taxes. And we beg to differ. We say, look, allow the company who has taken the risk to explore for the mineral, bring his capital to make sure that capital goes into looking for the mineral for us. Because ideally, we should actually be looking for these minerals before we invite investors to come and say, look, this is what we have. Let's sit down and talk and agree the terms. Unfortunately, we don't have that arrangement because of the risk profile. So effectively, it is about exploration. Thank goodness policymakers are actually listening to us. And I'm happy that we made some good progress. Our expectation is that hopefully by the end of this year, by the time we read the budget, we should have some interesting information in there to really reduce the barriers to entry for exploration. And then allow them to come. In business, how do we call it? Lost leadership, isn't it? FMCGs, they use it quite a bit. You don't have a background in the FMCG. So it's about lost leadership. Just impliedly, you're making a loss, but that attracts the customer to come in. And once they come in, they start producing, you make a cut. Then obviously we share the
So the concern is that move a chunk of the taxes post-production than
it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense.
On the bit about the stability agreement, and I have spoken to the sector minister who also threw the question back to me that, George, maybe it's time we take a second look at this whole taxation issue, because then if it's not handled well, it has impact on attracting fresh capital into the industry. But if you look globally, and it's not just a Ghana situation, where governments around the world realize that the commodity is fetching more in terms of pricing and all that. The same thing has happened for oil, where managers have moved in saying that, listen, let's review the tax regime, let's review the fiscal regime. If the commodity is doing well, if we assume the numbers of a chunk of the mining firms in the are doing well, is it wrong to say that, can you come to the table and let's review the fiscal and the taxes that we agreed with you even before we started production?
I would rather you say, let's come and have a kind of open book. And we already have that through GRA, which actually audits the accounts and making sure that everything is right. The basis upon taxation is correct, and then the appropriate taxes are actually paid. But you see, if what government wants to do is always to say that, oh, we believe that there is a windfall and therefore let's have a conversation and shut up. Okay. So if there's a slump, would government say that we have to actually sit down and then the government will contribute to the slump that the company, because don't forget, like I have said, some companies are struggling even to pay their suppliers. The complaints come to me. So it's a mixed bag, and we just have to be careful how you go about this.
Isn't those companies that are struggling more of a shareholder issue and fresh capital investment than the environment being a major factor? The shareholding disagreements and ownership issues, and these owners' failure to invest the right capital, and not because of the fact that the environment that they are operating in is that bad.
Well, the reality about mining is that there are different ore bodies. So someone may be mining an ore body with richness probably about 13 grams per ton. You find one mining an ore body which is 1 gram per ton. So you can imagine, even when you have a very favorable environment, especially the pricing, the impact on these companies are going to be very different. And that's why for us, it is about understanding and appreciating each company's situation. Let's sit down. What are your challenges? What can we do to support? If indeed there's this feeling that a company is doing so well, you know, above market rates, I'm sure there will be a way in which you can have a conversation with the company. But the reality again is that if you look at our competitiveness across the globe, government is taking quite a chunk of money revenue.
Compared to maybe the southern part of America, other countries in the West African region. If you look at the tax component, i.e. Ghana, is way higher than our peers, South Africa.
I wouldn't say it's way
higher.
higher.
Above middle line.
I wouldn't say way higher. What I would say is that we are in a competitive spot. If you have a royalty averaging 5% and a corporate tax of 35%, your effective tax rate is that high. You understand?
Compared to South Africa, compared to
other jurisdictions.
Other
jurisdictions. In fact, I did a back of an envelope, calculation a couple of weeks ago. And government receives about 26% of mineral revenue. 26%, and this is significant. You understand?
Compared to, not exact numbers, but I'm just saying that based on industry numbers over the period, are you saying that what government is receiving here is way higher than South Africa, maybe our neighbors in the West African region,
I believe so. I believe that if you consider where we were in the past and where we are today, we are seeing significant progression in terms of benefits for the country. Other jurisdictions may have different terms, and therefore you would expect the numbers to be different. I have done numbers where it's showing around 20%. That's a fiscal stake coming to the state. In our case, the last calculation I did, it came to around 26%. But like I have said, I have generally moved away from the fiscal discussion because it marks all the inherent value you would get from the value chain of the mining industry. And for me, that should be the larger conversation to say, what can we do to retain a lot more value within the country, i.e., what are the expenditures of these companies? In fact, the last research we did showed that about 50% of mineral revenue is actually spent by way of local purchases.
Interesting.
Exactly. So how do
is
we
that
make
the
sure?
reality? Because the
That's
complaint is that it appears that everything gets out of the country
so
and
untrue.
little stays in here, and there are questions about it becoming more to the benefit of the host community and the larger. But the numbers do not back this argument.
I have the numbers to show, and I can share the numbers with you. And I can pinpoint to you companies who are within the supply chain of the industry who are doing that well. The real challenge, though, is how do we make sure that these expenditures made by mining companies to Mr. A or Mr. B, who is a Ghanaian, stays within the country for the longest period? Unfortunately, because our production manufacturing capacity within the country is low, although orders we place with Ghanaian entrepreneurs, invariably the next thing they do is to import the items or import raw materials to come and support it. So that is a major challenge, and we've been trying so hard to work with the AGI, especially on how we can make sure that we have the productive capacity to support the mining industry. And that's how they have actually developed their economies on the back of the mining industry.
So what happened to the published what you pay? I don't know whether it affects the mining industry or more the oil rather, but there's been a school of thought that to deal with this whole transparency issue and to assess your contribution when it comes to the fiscal, which you don't want to talk about. I mean, maybe the time has come. If the individual companies don't want to do it, maybe you can do it collectively as an industry. That this has been the contribution in terms of the taxes, the revenue, the royalties. What has happened to that?
George, this is something we do on a regular basis. We do practically every year we do this. This year I think it's delayed a little bit, but last year we did, and hopefully by the end of this week, next week, we should be able to publish. I have a draft here I could share with you.
Do you think that it is gone out well in the public space, because there's still kind of an information challenge, where and we'll get deeper into where people are making certain push and arguments, and there are some school of thought who place it as a not well informed or as an emotional argument. Is it enough to now to let people really appreciate that this is what is happening?
I think that's a very important question you're asking. I think for a lot of people, they have actually blocked their minds towards what the Ghana Chamber of Mining would say, or any other person who's affiliated to the chamber would say. And that's why we've been using a lot of civil society guys to be working with them, because it's a question of credibility. And if we put it out there, someone will say it is self-serving. But the reality is that these are the numbers, especially when we are getting data from state institutions, whether it's the GRA, Minerals Commission, Bank of Ghana. The minister quoted, where did he get the information from? 54% gross merchandise exports coming from mining. You can't discount it. Sometimes we say, where is the Ghana city now? It's around 16.5 thereabout.
16.50,
trust me, if you didn't have the mining industry, probably would be heading towards around 25. Yes, 55% coming from.
But some also would question the argument that despite that we are mining or in a mining giant in the world, look at our gold reserves and all the rest. And some would also place that argument that, listen, we are a major mining country, but we are not feeling that impact on our gold reserves and even the currency. Countries who don't mine gold, they have huge reserves, and it's impacting on their currency.
But George, that's a smart observation.
Yeah.
But we don't play in that space, you know what I mean? Mining companies don't play in the space.
But you made the argument about how if the mining industry was not there, what could happen to our currency?
All I'm saying,
those who are not well informed also say that, well, we are mining, but look at where our city is.
But what I'm saying is this: in the space of reserves, in the last few years, championed by the Vice President, we've had a collaboration with the Bank of Ghana, where we sell part of our gold to the Bank of Ghana as part of our reserves.
Because you are being compelled to do that.
No, there's no legislation, there's no compulsion. No way.
The mining firms would have done this of offering their gold to the Bank of Ghana.
Not true. Because you see, mining companies invariably bring part of their gold into the country every year.
Is that happening?
Well, let me explain to you.
Okay.
Because through the sale of their forex into Ghana cities to run the operations, what happens is that the gold is sold offshore. They bring the forex back into the country, and they use that to run the operations. When the EMT, headed by the Vice President, called us and they said, look, Mr. Kone, Chamber of Mines, this is what we want to do. I said, look, no brainer. Because effectively we bring the dollars back into the country. So if you want to buy gold from us and pay us in Ghana cities, it's a zero-sum game.
What component of your FX or reserves that you bring? Because they get the argument in the past and again, whether it's based on uninformed argument about the fact that everything stays outside. In percentage-wise, how much is brought back into the country? Because there are some who are questioning that the mining firms don't do that. And that is why our city is struggling.
George, let me ask a question. I'll answer that, but let me ask a counter question. So you have a mine like a Goldfields or a Newman, and they support their production with purchases. They have to purchase labor services. They have to purchase power, diesel, energy, principally various inputs which go into the mining industry. How do they pay for this if they don't bring the money back?
Obviously, they have other reserves here based on other
from
jobs.
Where? From where?
Not the
from
direct
where?
returns from the gold as well.
George, let's be serious here. So on the average, we are talking between 70 and 75% of their revenue comes back to the country every year.
That is in FX.
Yes.
And it comes back in
It comes back in the
Bank
country.
of Ghana data will confirm
Of course
that.
they do confirm. They confirm that. They confirm that. In fact, there are some vendors who are allowed to collect their receivables or their payments from the mining industry in USD with the approval of the Bank of Ghana.
Why is that happening?
Well, that's the nature of the business. That is the nature of the business. So all I'm saying is that a lot of money comes back into the country.
It's not true that a lot of your firms are holding their money in offshore accounts.
That's why I asked
they are
the
not bringing it back. But you said you're going to educate me, which I needed so much.
But that's why I asked the counter question. If you have our industry is really energy intensive, you know that. You have to pay for labor. Energy in terms of power, in terms of diesel, you have to pay for labor. You have to buy various consumables from local vendors, lubricants, greases, and all of that from local vendors, because that is what we have agreed with the Minerals Commission under the procurement list of this country. How are you going to pay for it if your money is sitting offshore? It has to come. Naturally, it has to come. You have to pay for labor. So the money has to come. And we have evidence which shows that in the last few years, an average between 70 and 75% of mineral revenue comes back to the country. And I'm telling you, if we didn't have this money come back to the country, you can imagine what would happen to our city.
This is PM Express Business Edition, engaging the Chief Executive of the Ghana Chamber of Mines on development in the industry and whether indeed it is fair with arguments about whether the time has come to take a second look at the contribution of the gold industry in Ghana. This is PM Express Business Edition. Be right back after this break. Welcome back to PM Express Business Edition, engaging the Chief Executive of the Ghana Chamber of Mines, the Suleiman Kony, on development in the mining industry and whether indeed calls even for us to ban mining in this country is well placed or not. Mr. Kony, again, just to get your personal thoughts on this whole thing, there are push for us to review the stability agreement that some of the mining firms have with government of Ghana because of what is happening in the industry. Fair or not? Or some are saying that, listen, stick to the agreement. Any reviews would not augur well. There have been arguments. There have been eminent professors like Pasoya. All sort of arguments being made out there. For you, maybe let's draw the line between your personal views and the chamber's views, I must say.
George, the reality is that I've not heard about these arguments that we should open up the investment agreements of mining companies. It's not come to me. But the reality is that if you look at the structure of the investment agreements that the companies have, and it's not all the companies who have, just a few of them. Effectively, there are three companies who have investment agreements. And what it does, effectively, is to freeze the fiscal terms, so to speak. But nobody has said that to me. But if that's the argument, the reality is that companies will never shy away from having a conversation. But if this is what government wants to do, you also have to be minded about what it will do to the reputation of our country. Because, you see, once you have an agreement, the expectation is that you should comply with the agreement. And don't forget that these agreements are ratified by Parliament. So it's not like someone sits in a room and then between two parties, they do a sweetheart deal. And that's it.
What about also the argument that let's take a second look at the agreements that GOG has with all the mining industries? I mean, some are saying that there's never been a greater time before than now to take a second look at the agreements that the entity or the company called Government of Ghana with its investor or shareholder called Mining Company?
Again, I have not heard this argument.
Okay.
It's not come to me. But again, let's be careful. Unless we are going to have a very myopic and short-term view of the industry. But if you want to be competitive and you are looking into the horizon, you are looking long-term, you want to be able to create a kind of stability, a stable environment which investors, in fact, as we see it, we are expecting that a lot more investors will come, besides the other majors we have in this country. So to go and be tweaking the fiscal regime around this time because the price of gold has gone up, I think that we are just going to shoot ourselves in the foot. The reality is that these prices never go in one direction. I always quote my professor, Professor Kami Rugaziria, who says that these commodities, they never go in a straight line. They actually like drunkards. That's how they work. So we just have to be minded all the time. You know, be minded all the time to know that, yes, these are the good times, but then you could also have bad times. I joined the industry when the price of gold was $250. Can you imagine? And today, where are we with the price of gold? Exactly my point.
And the projections are that it's going to still go up.
Exactly my point. But then the reality is that we should also have a kind of dynamic arrangement. That's the beauty about the fiscal arrangements we have now. So we have a sliding scale mineral royalty rate for the investment agreements. And then again, for corporate tax, we went over and above the generic corporate tax in this country. From 25% to 35%. What more do you want?
Post one more.
What more do you want?
If I look at your numbers and I look at the fact that the majority of you are doing well, I mean, yeah, a few, one or two might be having some challenges, but majority of you guys your members are doing well.
I think the argument should be flipped to say, how can we encourage a lot more Ghanaian entrepreneurs to invest in mining? That for me should be the argument.
Coming from?
Well, we have to raise the capital. We have to. I have never believed in this argument that we don't have money in Ghana to do anything. I've never believed in that.
Nothing has stopped any Ghanaian over the years, even forming consortiums and all the rest. Firms that Government of Ghana had holdings. The holdings actually dropped significantly. So the argument is that it's a little bit challenging.
No, but again, you are talking about risk, and you're a person of finance and investment. So if you are shying away from the risk of mining and you're expecting an FDI to do mining, then you should understand the risk this entrepreneur is actually going through. And you know what they say in business, high risk, complete it for me.
Yeah.
High risk.
There's a better returns.
Of course, better returns. But all I'm saying is that let's change the narrative. Over the years, we have actually harped on and focused on FDI to develop our mining industry. Of course, in the last few years, we have seen big changes. Adamos, for example, a member company of the chamber, wholly Ghanaian owned. Okay? We also have Ghana Bauxite now. Of course, they are no longer members of the chamber, also 100% owned. The thing is to have intimate conversations with this company because they're struggling. I know, I've been speaking with them. What can we do to support our own, to help them? Because the reality is that we've been around for a long time. And therefore, in terms of the knowledge, the skills, and all of that, we have it in abundance in this country. The last data I saw in terms of employment, I think about only 1.2% of regular employment in the mining industry are expatriates. Yeah.
So now Ghanaians are taking a chunk of that.
A chunk of it.
You know, having more of the firms bringing in the expatriates to even maybe some would say small clerical work in the office is being done by an expatriate.
Not anymore. Only 1.2% expatriates, and even that, there are targets for them. Within 3 years, train someone, off you go. Others will come in, Ghanaians will come in. You know, so in terms of knowledge, skills, of course we have University of Mines and Technology there, churning out all of these expertise.
Are they getting space in your industry? I spoke recently, the chief executive of the Association of Oil Marketing Companies, where he was complaining that even with the mining engineers and petroleum engineers, they are struggling to get jobs. So most of them are running out of the country in Asia and all the other mining or oil industry.
That's a good observation. But the opportunities in this country, and we decide not to see it. Opportunities around small-scale mining. Why don't we make sure that we train our own to go and support small-scale mining?
Let's look at FDI. Let's look at FDIs and in terms of how is Ghana placing right now. Are we still a highly placed destination for the Black Rocks and all the rest who want to come in, or even the mining giants out there? There's a lot of a challenge now in terms of our competitiveness or attractiveness to have these big players to come into the space.
So you've answered it, so you know it.
I don't know.
George,
I don't know.
George, you have said it.
I don't know.
Look, we are in a good place, but we could be in a better place.
We are still not. We are not a preferred place as we speak.
I wouldn't want to put
Again,
it that way.
maybe my choice of words, but rating it at among our peers. If today BlackRock has about maybe $100 billion to do mining within the sub-region, will Ghana be the top 3 on his list?
Probably yes. In spite of all the challenges we have, probably yes. Don't forget that we are the #1 when it comes to gold production. Our political climate has been good. It's the envy of many. But we still have challenges. Challenges around exploration, challenges around permitting, licensing, and so on and so forth. And here we are working with regulators to actually streamline these things. So yes, we could be in a better space. But like I'm saying, we are not sitting back and saying there are challenges. Our style is to identify these challenges and work with our partners in government, especially regulators, to streamline so at least there is predictability. You know that I put in an application today, in 90 days' time, you are sure that you get your payment or your license.
So at least we are still preferred destination.
We are not bad at all.
If you look at the industry right now, and some would say that going forward, the critical question that you raised right now, Kondusha raised right now about the gold production, what accounted for it? I look at the numbers myself and I was surprised. Is it that there are more players coming in, the environment is now becoming more predictable, or your guys are just overworking, doing a 24-hour economy working in their mining industry, and that's why it has translated into the production, the ounces. And I even look at globally in the world, and we are still among the top 5 or top 10. I stand to be corrected. I mean, we're doing quite well in terms of production. What is, from the perspective of the chamber, what is causing this thing?
I think if you look at the numbers closely, you realize that rather the chamber had a decline. Member companies of the chamber had a decline. And a lot of the growth is around small-scale mining. Okay. Don't forget that small-scale mining had a major issue with government where withholding tax was pegged at 3%. And there was a lot of rancor. Eventually, government decided to reduce that to 1.5. So that has ensured that you have this, good performance from the small-scale mining sector. Like I said, we need to have a lot more investment. I don't like talking about our competitiveness as though we are losing everything. We continue to be competitive. But the reality is that there are other giants within the sub-region who are doing pretty well. Like a few days ago, we had a discussion looking at how we can position Ghana as the hub for the supply of various services, goods and services within the sub-region. And this work has been done for us. Probably when the report is out, we'll share it with you. And it talks about, I don't want to mention the name of the country, but they appear to be beating us on various fronts. You understand? South Africa. No, it's not South Africa. Within West Africa. Within West Africa. No, not Mali. Not Mali.
Burkina Faso?
No. so we could do with more investment. But like I'm saying, there are constraints around permitting, around licensing, and so on and so forth. And we need to streamline to give more certainty and predictability around when these permits applications would be honored. And it's one area we have to work closely on.
So Connie, let's look at the benefit of mining and zoom it down to the industry, even the communities. There are some who look at the areas that your members are exploring gold, and they look at just the space and they say that we're not benefiting from mining. What do you tell them?
Yeah, George, I think that's an apt observation, but it's an observation I've always had an issue with. When you have a guest, and mining companies are guests, and they come under terms and conditions. Like you have a home, you invite your guests to come in and say, you can do this, you cannot do that. Sometimes your guests will go above and whatever you actually prescribe, and then probably shower your children with some few stuff here and there, help go the best way they could. But the ultimate responsibility of looking after your children is your good self. So if you look at the fiscal arrangement in this country, and generally we collect all the monies from the mining company, especially corporate tax, which now trumps royalty payments, because most of the mining companies are matured, and therefore corporate, they are in the corporate tax paying position, and therefore they continue to make payments. In respect of that, probably 2 or 3 times what we get by way of royalty. And this money goes to the GRA. George, the reality is, if you ask ourselves questions, is it morally right that practically none of that specifically goes to communities for development? All we have is just royalties, and a portion of royalties, even that is so paltry. And the difficulty is that it's so uncertain when these monies are actually returned to the communities for development. And because of the uncertainty, go ask the planners at the various assemblies, the district assemblies, the municipal assemblies, their planning challenges and the frustration they go through. Because the monies don't come regularly. And even when the monies come, what do they use it for? Go and read the EITI reports. They're essentially going into recurrent expenditure, going to some people call it waste management, and so on and so forth. So mining companies also have a moral responsibility, and that's why they set up their foundations and trust funds, dedicated vehicles for community development. But mining companies cannot bear the full responsibility. Government also has to come to the party. Government receives quite a chunk. So I tell people, I am from Accra, and I'm sure my people from Accra will beat me. But the reality is that you can see it evidently, that a lot of the mining revenue stays in Accra, more than Takwa or Boase, right or wrong? Well, I'm asking you. I can't tell. It stays more in Accra than Obuasi. And for the average Ghanaian, he goes to Obuasi, he goes to Takwa, he would say, oh, we are not benefiting because of the state of Obuasi or Takwa. But the real benefits, go ask GN, ask Ministry of Finance.
Say that the chamber, mining industries are big players. Why haven't you over the years lobbied to ensure that a fraction, the community development, the percentage that should go to these communities is done, and not everything stays in the consolidated fund? We
continue to do it. In fact, on the basis of that, so John, let me explain. On the basis of that, we had the Minerals Development Fund Act, which came into being, I think, 2006 thereabout, 2016, 2016 thereabout. But our advocacy is for a lot more. We want to see a part of corporate tax go into the communities as well. Yes, agreed that the minerals belong to all of us, but they bear the brunt. They are very close to the operations. And if indeed we want to see a transformation of Obuasi and Takwa, we should send a lot more money there. Joining hands with the companies, their own corporate social investment. And I'm sure, give ourselves like 5-10 years, a plan to transform the communities. The reality is that we have an important asset like mining. All we have done is to fleece the mining industry, get monies from the mining industry without putting anything back in the community. And that, for me, is quite immoral.
Mr. Collins, I mean, the argument is always raised between Johannesburg and all the rest. What has these other countries done to ensure that the cities benefit, and the same cannot be done for an Obuasi? I read about Obuasi mine when I was a kid, and you still look at the current state of the Obuasi community. What are the learnings from these other countries that have made sure that if there are mining going on in a city or a region, we will make sure that everybody will see the immediate benefit of that mining to the host community?
That's a very important question as well. I tried to explain earlier on that mining doesn't just take place. It starts with exploration. And generally, as a country, we should have an idea where we have what by way of minerals, even before you start the actual drilling, because you do other things which will really help us reconnaissance by way of flying various equipment and all of that, to have a sense of what you have. And then to be able to get exactly what you have, then you have to give licenses for drilling and so on and so forth. So all I'm saying is that mining should be a part of our development agenda, as a minimum. I don't want to give examples, but the reality is that there's a company which has set up in the Upper East region, just to illustrate. And it's a member company of the chamber. first few meetings we had with them, we said, look, you guys, you would need to be moving to your region on a regular basis. Don't forget that most of the admin work is in Accra. The policymakers, everybody's in Accra. But the operations are there. So you have to be commuting. Have you ever thought about getting an airport in this region? Because this region didn't have an airport. I'm sharing this story with you for you to really understand what mining and development is. So you don't wait to start mining operations and then you're asking questions about development. You ask this question even before the licenses are actually issued because you know what you have. And as part of your larger development plan of a country, you should know where you want what in the country and say, these are the resources I have in this part of the country. How can I leverage these resources for broad-based development for those communities and for the nation? Trust me, when I spoke with this company, they said, why not?
So the airstrip is there now?
No, it's not an airstrip. They're going to build a proper airport.
In the upper?
Yes, and Upper East region. Another example. I said, company, you know, you're going to freight a lot of material to construct your mine and then to run your mine. Are we going to use the congested roads with all the safety hazards and everything? Would you consider water transport? I said, well, they can't consider that. I should not be asking these questions. Policymakers, where are the development experts? Especially when it comes to mining, we don't consider development. Who do you sit around the table when it comes to negotiating mining deals? Lawyers, accountants, finance persons, probably mining engineers, some geologists, finish. And then the company will start mining after 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Say, oh, but we are seeing no development. I say, but did you consider development as part of the agreement? No, you did not. So that what we are saying is that we need to have that reorientation. Here we are talking about decentralization agenda as a country. How do we leverage the presence of mining industry for the decentralization? Recently, Goldfields built their TNA park. Yeah. I know they are going to build some hospitals as well. I was there. Yeah. Apinto Hospital as well. What are the thought processes? One of the things we have been advocating at the chamber is that we need to have an airport in the Takwa enclave as well.
Not an airstrip.
Not an airstrip, a proper airport. And we started the conversation. All I'm saying is that we don't, of course we are Ghanaians as well. We are quite influential in the policy space as well. But all we can do is to persuade. We want policymakers, those who have the power, who are duty bearers, who have the power to get things done, to also have a rethink. Come together with us and the mining industry and let's do great things for ourselves. Years ago, not too long ago, we engaged the Ministry of Finance and we said, look, can we have an arrangement where roads within the mining communities would be pre-financed by the mining companies so that these monies would be settled from the obligations to the state? 2024 budgets, this was about 3 years ago. 2024 budgets, elements of this were there. They said they were going to engage with us for this to be realized. George, ask whether we've had any opening conversation.
Mr. Quinn, when we come back, we're looking at what about the human resource personnel as well and the opportunity for the indigents in these communities. This is PM Express Business Edition as we engage the Chief Executive of the Ghana Chamber of Mines on developments in the mining industry and whether indeed some of these calls that let's actually ban mining as well place justified on. I'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to PM Express Business Edition as we talk about mining, the state's benefits and whether we're getting more from this industry and its contribution to the community as well as the host and local communities as well. Mr. Kwandi, what is the plan? I know the documents are there and the policies are there in terms of ensuring that if mining is taking place in Takwa, a fraction of the job opportunities are given to the indigents in that area, not George Wiafe moving from Accra to Takwa and then a host or stay in that for maybe 6 months or 2 months and apply and say that I am an indigent from Takwa.
It's a major challenge, and this is where you have issues with the Ghana Mine Workers Union. They have been so unhappy about this situation, this question of how do we give preferential treatment to the indigenes within the communities. But the reality is that the mining companies are already doing the same. I've seen numbers where, for example, about 70% of employees are actually coming from host communities.
70%?
About 70%. I've seen reports coming from, I don't want to mention names of companies, but of course, it's not all of them who are within that bracket, but there's a push now from the companies themselves, realizing that they need to buy their social license.
What category of workers here are we looking at?
Across the board, actually.
Okay.
Generally across the board. I sit on one of the foundations of a member company, and I saw how a lady and a gentleman, in fact, about 4 of them, 2 ladies, two gentlemen, had been picked from the basic level, offered scholarships all the way to tertiary, and they came out with first class, and they've been given opportunities on the mine.
Yeah, indigenous.
These are indigenous from the community. So a lot of that is happening, and that is why you see the numbers. Practically, just about 1% are expatriates. A lot of them are actually coming. Of course, in the past, you had a lot of people trooping from Kumasi, from Accra to go to the mines, but gradually, it is changing, because in the scheme of things, the mining companies would endeavor to make sure that they give opportunities to the locals.
What about remuneration and pay as well, in terms of the fact that if these guys in the host communities are being encouraged to look at the job opportunities, they are being paid the market rates, the fair market value for what they are bringing or contributing to these mining firms?
Yeah, I think that's a valid question as well. The reality is that most of these employees belong to unions, and you are sure that the Ghana Mine Workers Union would make sure would make sure that they get the right remuneration. It's well known that the mining industry pays quite well. So yeah, they are not being shortchanged at all. We don't want to rest there. We want to make sure that these indigenes would make good money. They invest within the communities, whether buildings, whether other businesses they want to set up, and all of that is what creates and develops communities. It's not just government. It's not just companies who are throwing money out there, but people working within the community, benefiting from the mining company, and then having been so pleased and so blessed, decide that they will do a kind of side hustle, like we all do, a side hustle, and invest within the community. So yes, infrastructure has to be right, but then once infrastructure is right, the enabling environment is right, the expectation is that we are all rational people. You make some money, you do some savings, after a while you want to do some investment. And these investments continue to be done. In fact, the last time I went to Takwa, I was amazed. The developments taking place in Takwa, not just off the main roads, but the inner parts of Takwa. Of course, not all the parts of Takwa, but some major parts of Takwa. I saw massive development in terms of structures coming up. Of course, these are not government structures. It shows the buoyancy of Takwa because of the sheer presence of the mine. I always tell the story of my previous job when I used to visit Takwa back in the day. And you don't want to see the hotel I used to sleep in. In fact, I did a pilgrimage with my staff to go see the hotel back in the day. Today, go to Takwa and you can see minimum 3-star hotels in Takwa. Okay, so the sheer presence of a mine. In fact, back in the day, that was when mining just about started in the 90s. But fast forward to today, you get one of the best hotels you can find in Takwa. And the expectation is that we are going to get a lot more. Once you put in infrastructure, particularly, I'm quite passionate about the airport. Once we get the airport running, you're sure that a lot more investment, apartments and things will come up, because expatriates will not spend the night in Accra. They will move directly from the airport in Accra to Takwa. And that would be good business for
Mr. Kwani, if these indigents are being given opportunity, and 70% is huge, they are being paid well. I'm talking about indigents here.
Yeah.
What is the motivation for these indigents to then get into the space of illegal small-scale mining that we popularly call galamsey?
Well, the reality is that the mining industry cannot employ everybody. We have a lot of technology.
70% is huge.
It's huge.
If it's going to indigents, and they are being paid well.
Yeah, they paid well. they are paid well. The reality is that mining companies cannot employ everybody. And that's why for us, we're looking beyond direct employment and looking at the value chain, the supply chain of the industry. And that's why I'm quite excited about the training being given at the University of Mines and Technology now to say, give them some entrepreneurial training. The thing of getting out of a mine, of a university and expecting that you work on a mine, it cannot be granted. So what are you going to do for yourself? Remember I spoke about small-scale mining. That is a challenge for this country. It's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity that we have students coming out, graduates of the University of Mines and Technology and other universities, other technical institutes, so well trained, so certified by the Minerals Commission, as we do in the mining industry, to be monitoring and supporting these small-scale miners. I always tell people that the difference between small-scale mining and large-scale mining is the scale. Mining companies, of course, members of the chamber, they run large-scale operations, we all know that. And the small-scale miners run on a small scale. But it's practically the same kind of mining, quite hazardous. You need the skills to be able to do it. You need to do exploration, which they don't do. So for me, it's about mimicking what we have in the large-scale mining space and making sure that some of the graduates of the universities, by law, are allowed to support them. We are not there yet, but it's something I believe we need to have. Making sure that beside the inspectors coming from the Inspectorate Division of the Minerals Commission, we also, because you see, in the industry, our industry, by law, even when you have a PhD in mining engineering, you cannot automatically work on a mine.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you have to be so certified, especially when you want to occupy a certain position by the Minerals Commission. I believe that we are getting to a point where we need to have that replicated for small-scale mining as well. So besides all the regulatory, work done by the Inspectorate Division, the Minerals Commission and all of that, there should be a space for private sector as well. A pool of people who are so certified by the government, Minerals Commission, our sector ministry, who will be called upon, are expected to provide services for these companies. So if you are talking about regulation of small-scale mining, that is my personal view, that we need to up the ante. We have a challenge, but we also have an opportunity. We have graduates coming out of the university. Let us use them.
So, Mr. Kwena, I still come back to my question about the pull factor here, that from you being in the industry and the lot of research that you've done, what is the pull factor for maybe Joe Mensah in Takwa, with all the opportunities that are there, he still want to operate in that space of Galamsey? What are the pull factors here that if indeed there are opportunities for that person to work in a regulated mining area, even if not the top, lower middle, opportunities, the salary is good, Joe Mensah still believes that my space is Galamsey because I'll get more money than what a mining firm in the chamber will offer to me. What are the intelligence on the ground that the industry is often briefed about? Why? Let's look at the person first. We'll come to the environment and the regulation thing.
I think essentially it has to do with kind of get-rich-quick mentality.
The formal job, the regulator is not doing that.
Well, it does, but what are the numbers?
Where
are the numbers?
Well?
No, George. No, it's not about that. Back in the day, you have tens of thousands of persons working on a particular mine. This is no longer so because of technology, innovations, and so on and so forth. So the numbers have actually come down generally. So you will not expect that a mine will be able to absorb practically everybody in the community. It's not possible. And that's why there should be other opportunities. I spoke about the supply chain. I spoke about the value chain. I've spoken about small-scale mining, So there's a thing for small-scale mining. Small-scale mining is allowed by law. It is regulated. But illegal mining is not. So the reality is that if that mentality of get rich quick, I want to go in there at the end of the day, every day I'll get my wages. That mentality, compared to someone who will say, I want to go into agriculture, I want to do an alternative livelihood project. You see where the differences are, which the gestation period may be 3 years, maybe 4 years, before you start getting your returns. So yes, it's a major issue for us as far as illegal mining is concerned. But I see it as an opportunity for our country. How can you work with them? Making sure, essentially about exploration, knowing that, look, we have these mineralized bodies in this particular area, go there, focus with effective supervision and make sure you do what you have to do. And then making sure that supervision, not just in words, but in practical terms, furnishing governments with your returns, similar to what large-scale mining companies do. You get what I mean? So that is the essential motivation, the key motivation has to do with the attitude and mentality that I want to go into an endeavor today and come back at the end of the day with something which I can use to look after myself.
Are people fair? And again, sorry if my choice of word to have not been privy to data and happenings on the ground that would even blame some of the regulated mining firms of aiding this Galamsey, or by their actions or inactions helped the growth or fuel these actions of Galamsey by what you do locally, your practice and all the rest. And even some will say they are foreigners who will see this passion of the place to them for them to go and work when they had not been licensed, when they've been all those things. Some would also want to put the blame on some of your members. Your inactions and actions is fueling the growth of this legal mine.
No, not really, George. I'm not being defensive here. But the reality is that the law frowns on any company, ceding part of its concession to
Hasn't
anybody.
that happened before?
No way.
It
No
hasn't
way.
happened
Never ever. It's against the law, and you will be
when you're
sanctioned.
having people terrorizing the communities that we want, our land.
So
how do you deal with those
exactly?
concerns?
So you could have a concession, and then you decide that a part of your concession is not in your life of mine, i.e., for the viability of the mine, you don't need this portion of your concession. The law allows you to surrender that portion back to the country, to the government, through the Minerals Commission. So that's what the company would do. In fact, Minerals Commission sometimes would plead with companies that, look, give us part of your concession so that we can parcel it out to small-scale mining or community mining. So, but the companies generally will not do that. It is against the law, and they will never do that, no.
How do we get around this challenge of Galamsey from the perspective of the regulated firm? Because some are saying that I don't think that you want to see yourself as an island.
No,
the repercussions are getting closer and closer, and for the green investors and the sustainable investors out there and the sustainable financiers, it could be just a matter of time. But let me first start with, for you, the industry, what has been your policy proposals in dealing with this menace that is virtually eating up everyone?
Well, the industry years ago, before Galamsey became what it is today, realized that this was a problem. And we didn't just sit aloof. One of the goals of the chamber is to provide thought leadership for the solution, for finding solutions to problems in the mining industry nationwide. So we decided that this was going to be a problem. Why? Because the problem had actually emanated on the concessions of mining companies. People forget about this. Years back, we struggled to actually get them off our concessions. So one of the things we did was to conduct a study. We got to commission a study. This was about 15 years ago. And one of the key recommendations has to do with making sure that we have a view of the extent of mineralization of parcels of land before we parcel them for small-scale mining. And that's what I've been speaking about, so you remember, speaking about exploration. So that for us is what needs to be done. That mining is good, but look, the laws of the land, Constitution, the Minerals and Mining Act 703 requires that you get a license before you mine. So we are all for small-scale mining, supporting small-scale mining, but we should make small-scale mining attractive. Support them, help them the best way we can as a country. And we have, in this interview, I have provided a few solutions. Working with the University of Mines and Technology, making sure that the products coming out, mining engineers, those who are in the health and safety space, those in the environment, are given the requisite training adapted for small-scale mining. Minerals Commission, working with them, training them, certifying them, and making sure that we know where these small-scale miners are, as we do for large-scale mining, and providing report feedback. Because as we speak, you wouldn't believe it, but the reality is that we don't even have numbers for production for small-scale mining. What we have is just a proxy for production. It's more export.
Free for all.
It's export. And my issue generally around this is this. If you say that you are regulating a segment of the industry, then you should have a full handle on it.
Is strict regulation the answer?
Say again?
Strict regulation of that space, the small scale mining, and even taking decisive measures, the answer to this illegal
I think so. And I keep saying, the solutions are not too far away from us.
We know the solution.
Look at what is happening to the large scale mining sector and mirror that, adapt that for small scale mining sector. We employ students from the University of Mines and Technology and other universities. We train them and they work on the mines. Why can't we have a similar situation where technical persons out of the universities are well trained, so trained purposely for small scale mining? Because we have a challenge there with supervision. Yes, Minerals Commission, the regulator, would have people who are trained across the world who will be regulating. But there's also space for private sector regulation, co-regulation, so to speak. And that's what we have in the industry. It has to happen.
Because there have been one or two instances where some will accuse some mining firms of, waste issues and even the communities and all the rest. And it's come up sometime, whether it's been fairly reported or not. So it's even all that rules when it comes to the environment issues, even from the regulated firms.
We need to up the ante when it comes to small scale mining. I think that is very, very important. It belongs to us. The law says that it has to be done by a Ghanaian. We all know this. So let's give our brothers and sisters the opportunity to do it and do it well, and make sure that they are also aligned with this whole effective regulation thing, that it cannot be free for all. I tell people, if you say you are doing small scale mining which is regulated, I don't want to come to your concession and, excuse me to say, I see flip-flops. Charlie Water, working on the mine. You get what I mean? So I know Minerals Commission is trying so hard. They've come up with some benchmarks, and so on, and guidelines regarding how this has to be done. I've seen it on paper. But we want effective, practical field regulation. And like I said, the solutions are not far.
If I look at the environmental impact, and I'll come back to the bit about it is just a matter of time that the green bondholders, the sustainable thinking bondholders or investors are out there will start placing your requirements or restrictions on you. When you look at all these things that are happening, our water bodies being polluted and all, and this didn't happen just 2 months. Some are saying that, something, let's ban mining or let's ban mining. Are these concerns well placed? From small scale mining even to the large scale mining. After all, let's weigh the option of the fiscal impact and i.e. to our water bodies being destroyed, our farms being destroyed, and even the health implications of persons in these local communities. Our lives are more important than whatever.
So true. So true that our lives are more important. However, as a student of marketing, I've trusted in segmentation. You have a problem, segment the problem. But you don't put everything together.
Segmentation where we have to small scale mining, large scale mining. Yeah, look at what is happening to our water bodies. Look at what is happening to the environment.
Exactly my point. And you segment the problem you have. Find out the issues you have for each of the segments. I work with small scale mining, with large scale mining firms. One of the most regulated industries in the world, and even in Ghana, I can count the number of regulators who look into the large scale mining space. All I'm saying is that we should also look at small scale mining and help them with proper, effective regulation.
Some are saying we don't have time. If you look at what is happening right now, the best thing, if it's not banning the activity, maybe a total overhaul and freeze of everything that is happening.
George, we've done this before.
Oh, tell me.
We have, as a country, we have done this. I think over a year we had this a moratorium, we had a ban.
And didn't address the problem.
Exactly my point. So
that is not the way to go.
And that's why I'm talking about effective regulation, to say that we have to change the narrative. We need to know where you are and what you are doing and how much you are producing. I'm not interested in the proxy for production. I want to see the real physical production. For me, that is regulation. And who is in charge of this small scale mining operation? Who are the technical experts who have been so approved by the Minerals Commission to actually help with the regulation of this, together with the regulators themselves? It's no-brainer. That is what we have in the large-scale mining space. You breach it, you lose your license.
The
As a
scene
person,
is not being moved into the small
that has to
scale
happen.
space.
That has to happen.
And therefore,
so we are quite.
But it's not the answer.
It's not the answer. We are quite happy to see that production is going up. It means that our own brothers and sisters are doing well. We should help them to do it well, much better. Of course, the argument is that we have others who are doing it well. Fine, that's okay if that is the case. But we also believe that there are others who are not. And through no fault of theirs, let's put in place the measures, effective regulation, making sure that we have the field people working with them, like they do for the industry.
I think regulation is the problem here.
I think
that
so.
is what is causing this thing. If regulators are tough, we can deal with this thing very soon.
I believe so. What we need is boots on the ground
to deal with the issue.
To deal with the issues.
Are you worried about, and let me start first with the bad press, the public relations stuff, and for somebody look at the industry, this is bad. Are you worried?
I am. We are worried. Don't forget that they bear the brand we bear.
Mining.
And that's
that
mining.
Is it.
And
nobody knows large or small scale.
Exactly my point. And that's why we are quite passionate about finding a solution to this. And like I'm saying, no brainer. The solutions are very close to us if indeed we want to do it. We have the willingness
as players, have you pushed hard yours? Because I look at the industry and I look at the hold you have on this economy. If your members really care and you just are living in a house, a first-class apartment in East Legon, your neighbor hasn't got a WC, it's just a matter of time.
Sure.
It will stink to your house.
Sure.
Have you given it that much commitment?
We have.
All these years, and we are not seeing.
I could share with you.
Because they say if you care about your neighbor who hasn't got a WC and is doing that thing on the floor or even in just around, it's just a matter of time. Someone is saying that it is coming home. This is not about football coming home.
That's so true. This is a serious matter. And that is why for us, about 15 years ago, we decided that let's try and understand and appreciate this animal called galamsey. We did a study about 15 years ago.
Do you understand it now?
Of course, we have always understood it. And we came out with recommendations. In fact, we went around policymakers to say, these are recommendations. First and foremost, make sure you know what is on the ground before you. That's what mining companies do. Because who would give you money to run your operations if you cannot show it to them, your feasibility report? And it is based upon what is on the ground. Why can't we do something similar for small-scale mining? It's so fundamental. And once you solve that problem, the very best of persons in terms of technical knowledge will support. They can get the best of financing to support the operation. In fact, one of the issues we've been speaking about has to do with how to raise indigenous capital for small-scale mining through exploration, and even large-scale mining. That let's look at the Ghana Stock Exchange. And we're having this conversation with the Ghana Stock Exchange. That, look, I know there's been a push for large-scale mining companies to list and all of that, but I speak and I say, look, but why do you always want large-scale mining companies to list? They're already fully listed elsewhere. They've raised their capital. But we have a challenge as a country. Like I told you, the solutions are around us. We have the solutions around us, but we just don't want to think differently. To say, Mr. A is doing exploration, is doing small-scale mining, he doesn't even know what is on the ground. How can he get support?
Are you worried that very soon the investors in some of your companies, large-scale investors who are green-related, are more conscious about sustainability, would tell that we could be pulling our funds out or we couldn't bring in fresh because of we don't see certain tough actions being taken in this space? The actions of galamsey and the replaying impact of the agitators on the global scene who might be making solid argument about the impact on the environment. I mean, even in the oil space, there are some who are pushing for cutting funding to those who are doing the fossil fuel and all the rest. It could be just a matter of time.
It's a valid argument. The reality, though, is that mining companies are quite conscious about their green credentials. And remember what I spoke about segmentation. We are in a segment which is really, really regulated. EPA, Inspector Division of Minerals Commission, Water Resources Commission, Forestry Commission, if need be, that many other regulators. So we continue to hold our members' hands to the fire to make sure that you're on the straight and narrow path. We continue to work with them, working together with the regulators, EPA, Minerals Commission. In fact, some of our formal meetings, you have them sitting at the table with us in taking decisions. How do we make sure that we are more proactive than reactive, working with the regulator in our formal meetings and so on and so forth. So we are minded that these concerns may come to the fore. But then what do you do yourself, making sure that you're on the straight and narrow path, working to make sure that investors are understanding or understand the situation regarding the formal large-scale mining, that they are compliant with all the regulations, their permit conditions of the EPA are being observed, the operating permits conditions are being observed, and so on and so forth. That certainly is the way to go for large-scale mining companies.
Do you see an end to this galamsey issue, or some will say that maybe whether I'm comparing apples and oranges here, just like prostitution, you know, you can just push it onto the black market, but it will still be there?
I think if you mean well as a state, as a country.
Political will?
It's one of them. And it's not just political will. Look, it's not just politicians who we know are behind, you know, illegal mining. There are other peoples of influence, you know, maybe business people, traditional authority. If we mean well that the very existence of our people is under threat, then certainly we should be able to have a handle on it. Unfortunately, we don't see it. Some of us have been around for so many years, and we've seen how other jurisdictions or other how do you call it? Other governments have actually handled galamsey. I don't want to mention names. Effective regulation, that is what we did. We need to be tough. We need to be on the ground and make sure that what is right and what is wrong is wrong. When I hear situations where illegal miners are reported to be armed, and even people in authority are scared and back off, it's a major issue for me. We are sitting on a ticking time bomb, and God forbid we don't get there. But if you consider what is happening within the sub-region, and from what I hear, most of these illegal miners are not Ghanaians, then we have to be careful. Because within the sub-region, we know what is happening. You know, the insecurity, the terrorists within the sub-region, what they are doing in the Sahelian region, the Mali, I don't want to mention the Niger, Burkina Faso, and so on and so forth. And if indeed most of these guys are not Ghanaians, they are foreigners, and they're getting access to explosives, getting access to money, taking time bomb. And we need to nip this in the bud as soon as we can.
Mr. Kony, as we try and wrap up on this discussion, one would also ask that in terms of skills transfer as well, how is that being dealt with to ensure that indeed more and more guys, so that you don't need to always bring in expatriate from outside too?
Well, this has gone down in terms of the expatriate. In fact, 2 years ago when I looked at the numbers, it was only 0.8%. You know, so in terms of expatriation, I don't really have a lot of issues. It's not one of the things which keeps me awake. Because I know that the mining companies mean well. And the regulator would also make sure that we don't bring in people who we don't need in the country. People with expertise coming to transfer knowledge and skills and technology to the country is what we need. However, if you look at the umbrella chamber, one of the things we've done in the last few years, which I'm quite excited about, is to pool our members together to contribute to what we call a tertiary education fund. And we are talking over 5 years, accumulating well over $2 million to support the University of Mines and Technology. This is just the chamber and its member companies coming to the center of the chamber. But the individual mining companies continue in their own way to grow the pie of Ghanaians, especially community members, through the mining, you know, pipeline of employment. So it's not one of the things I'm worried about at all, because I see some genuineness on the part of the mining companies to really support.
What about sourcing majority of your inputs also locally, those that can? Because the argument too is that there are global standards when it comes to procurement, you know, and all the rest. We won't sacrifice on all these things.
George, that's another you know, issue of interest to the industry, and we spent a lot of our energies in that area. So I think about close to 10 years ago, when we decided that we needed to do a lot of push in the local content area, bear in mind that there are issues around standards and all of that, we decided that we were going to sit with the Ghana Standards Authority and see how we can work together collaboratively. So we entered into an MOU. And we said, look, we need to work. You who are the owners of the standards. We just use the standards. So can we enter into an MOU, which was done? And as we speak, together we have been able to develop standards for electrical cables going to the mining industry. In the past, you had plant and equipment coming from across the globe, whether it's Australia, South Africa, UK, US, all of them will come with their own standards. Created a lot of confusion in the industry. Meanwhile, we have cable manufacturing firms in the country. What we have done now is to localize, harmonize that. So now we have Ghana standards for electrical cables going to the mining industry. We are doing something similar for grinding media, which we believe we can produce. Ultimately, we would need to be supporting the production of activated carbon. Looking in there, you will see a part of activated carbon, which I actually got from a local supplier. So we are putting a lot of effort in that space because we want to ensure that we have a lot of manufacturing on the back of the mining industry. Low-hanging fruits, inputs which we can produce locally, we should be able to support our own to be able to do that for us.
Mr. Kony, finally, I mean, just if not the exact numbers, so when it comes to this domestic purchase program, any idea how much the chamber or your members have sold to the Bank of Ghana, if not the exact numbers, so during the purely fair band we can look at here, not the exact numbers.
I wouldn't be able to give you numbers, but probably we are talking, I think the initial conversation was around 20% of production, and that has been agreed upon. A few variations here and there for some of the companies because of their own unique obligations to the state, and therefore they will not be able to do the ballpark 20%, but generally it's around 20%.
Are there any fair agreement we're going for it? If the deal is good, you could look at upping the amount, because that is what people could also look at and say that the larger economy is benefiting more from mine. I recently I did a scan on countries and their reserve position, and I look at the fact that Ghana's reserve position when it comes to gold backed was quite small.
Yeah, very, very, very small.
So is there the commitment that if it works well for others and the chamber, we could have the agreement be reviewed to up this amount of gold sold to the bank?
Yeah, the agreements are reviewed annually. I remember what I spoke about. Companies also have their own obligations, but where there's room for them to up, why not? They would up. They certainly would up to support the economy. And this is one area of our relationship with government which I'm really, really excited about, because you see, we have not been able to think through how we can use our industry. Going back to what I said from the beginning, is it an airport? Is it water transport? Is it about our reserves? There are so many things we can do using the presence of a mine in the country, which we have.
So Mr. Kony, if I get from you right and some education in terms of the surrender agreement, you are strictly implementing when it comes to these FX and as well.
Oh yeah. So it's a two-edged thing we are doing with the Bank of Ghana. So we have a forex sales as well. So companies may have excess forex, instead of going to the market to change for Ghana cities to run the operations, they've sell it to the Bank of Ghana.
Are you doing that?
Oh yeah. I have the reports I could share with you. Bank of Ghana shared the report for half year this 2024 with us. And then over and above that, we also have the sale of gold, working with their refineries and counterparties. MOUs, agreements have been signed between the Bank of Ghana and then the companies, and well, they continue to operate and to sell to them, which for me is a good thing. Probably this is something which I started years ago.
I see. So can you appreciate your time so much? And we'll come back to you again when developments happen and whether indeed all these good work is reflecting on the larger economy. This is PM Express Business Edition, engaging the Chief Executive of the Ghana Chamber of Mines about the impact, the benefits of mining to the economy. And I know the debate will still go on in your homes and your offices about whether indeed we are getting what we are supposed to get from this industry and whether tight regulation could be the answer to dealing with the Galamsey challenge. This has been PM Express Business Edition. My name is George Wiafe. Have a great day.